Ladies and gentlemen, today I am joined by Melissa Thompson, the Global Head of Talent Acquisition for the Ford Motor Company. Melissa, I'm sure everybody knows Ford from the cars that you produce. I'm a former Ford owner, a Mondeo myself, but can you share something about the size of the talent acquisition teams and your recruiting challenges? How many people do you hire on a yearly basis? Stuff like that.
For sure, for sure. So I've been at Ford for 4.5 years, and I came to Ford because the company was undergoing a major transformation. As car companies make that shift to hybrid and electric, they really started to have a need to change the way they went to market for talent acquisition. Um, and when I came on board, I initially owned just the US. And then in my second year, I picked up Europe. And in my third and fourth year, I picked up the rest of the Americas and now India. The global domination is almost complete. Um, One of my favorite things throughout my career is working with the Europe team to really think about, because sometimes people will treat Europe like a monolith, and it's not. It is a collection of very different countries that have different workers' councils and different laws and different challenges. So how did you go about pulling that together under one talent acquisition umbrella has really been a bit of a challenge for us. When I first started, there was a gentleman that was in charge of the team who I think was gifted with talent acquisition because he'd been here for a long time. He was in the HR team, who was a lawyer by trade, but he really didn't know a lot about talent acquisition. So early part of last year, we brought on board a talent acquisition leader who's a long time talent acquisition specialist. And that has been quite the turning point for recruiting in Europe. On average, we run with about 150 to 200 roles open across the region. There's a pocket in Hungary and Romania that is shared services recruiting, and there's a small team of four that focuses on that. The balance of the recruiting team sits either in the UK or Germany and covers all the rest of the region. It's interesting when you start to dig into the data because, um, let's say France, they don't do a ton of recruiting and they actually are not on the global ATS. So when they need to do a hire, it's all of these manual things that make it feel like it's 1972. And so a lot of our challenge right now is getting everyone to baseline on using the applicant tracking system, on um, hiring in a way that is what we professional recruiters would call talent advisor mentality, as opposed to either uh, post and pray, right? Hope that the right person is going to show up because you posted a job, or order taker. So when we go to a hiring manager saying, "Okay, hiring manager, what do you want?" is not really the talent advisor mentality. So in the past year, really seeing that shift happen has been absolutely amazing. And one of the things that I didn't expect, but which has been really a spark for me, is the number of hiring managers who say, "I didn't realize that recruiting could be like this. I didn't know I could get this level or this type of talent. I thought that these were, niche, hard to fill jobs, and you found me three, and it was a hard decision to make the final selection." So we've made quite a turn in the past 2 years.
All right, then that's you already answered the second and the third question I had for you. Amazing, but so you started out. You said with you hired a professional, a better TA leader who actually had TA leadership experience.
Yes.
In broad strokes, what other things did you change? What set off this transformation to basically a center of excellence?
Yeah. So the way I start a transformation, as you heard me say, I took over region by region, country by country. So I have a process for how the transformation works. And the first step is to get on the ground and do discovery. And discovery is talking to the HR business partners to understand the challenges. The discovery is talking to hiring managers. We run these sessions that we cleverly call under the hood because
Garcon.
we're under the bonnet in the UK, right? And it's really, what do you see as your challenges right now? And if you could have a magic wand to improve talent acquisition, what would those things be? And then we just collated all that information, and figured out what are the key pain points and what do we need to shift or change that will really help hiring managers get to that place where they feel like the transformation is happening. The other thing that I take with me everywhere I go, I've been using it for about 15 years, is a recruiting process model that I call CRISP, CRISP. And it stands for clarify, review, interview, select, prepare. It's a simple model, but in each letter of the model, it helps the recruiter and the hiring manager understand what their responsibility is. And moving from there is no process model to this clean, crisp, pun intended, process model really helps people see how you can fill a role in 45, 60 days, right? As opposed to sometimes things are languishing. The other thing that I focus a lot on is data, because the data tells a story. As I pick up new countries, what I find is people have not been paying any attention to the data. So, really building data quality and data integrity, and that is going in, pulling a requisition report, and understanding why is there a requisition in Spain that's had 2 work days, meaning it's been open more than 650 days. What is going on with that, right? And it's interesting because when you dig in, the hiring manager says, well, I was just hoping that someone would apply. It's like post and pray on steroids. And I'm like, yeah, that's not a thing. If it's been open for 2 years and no one's applied, you probably need to figure out how to do something differently.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I've had those in my career as well. 6 months waiting for a full professor at a university where I was
yes.
interim. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But it's interesting because once you start to put process in place, once you start to put requisition management in place that says if a hiring manager is non-responsive to the recruiter in 10 business days, the requisition goes on hold. And then if they remain non-responsive for another 15 business days, the requisition gets canceled. If you follow through on that, the next time that hiring manager opens a rec, they are super responsive. So we put these things in place and we report out all these things because it helps really drive the transformation and really builds the process. It moves us from, I like to say, from 2 pound weights to 5 pound weights to 10 pound weights.
okay. So I already heard you say you went from basically from recruiters to talent advisors. So I assume there was some upskilling for the recruiters. How did you handle that?
Yeah, I would say more so than upskilling, we actually rewrote the job description for the recruiter and then help people understand whether they had that skill or not. And some people voted themselves off the island, and then we fired behind them stronger talent advisor capable recruiters that also had experience covering all of Europe, not just the UK or not just Germany. And what's interesting is when you put 3 or 4 of those recruiters on a team of 10 or 12, the rising tide lifts all boats because when they start to see a peer that is doing these things, they start to follow in those footsteps, doing deep dives in their discovery sessions, following up with the hiring manager on a weekly basis, providing regular reporting. These are all just a lot of the basics, but once you start doing them, it drives a better outcome.
Yeah, and goed. I'm trying to figure out the English version of a saying we have, but basically, good leadership makes good followers. You know,
Absolutely.
if you have
Absolutely.
somebody showing you the way and showing you the results, it really, really helps.
It absolutely does. And one of the things I tell both my direct reports, my recruiting managers on my team, is you can't look at people and say, follow me. You actually have to show them and then they will follow you. You can't just tell them.
Yeah, yeah. I had that once at a company where the recruiting manager finally dared to stand up to one of the hiring managers, the high big up hiring managers, and then all of a sudden the recruiters felt empowered to say like, "No, this is the process, and now you need to follow it as well." Yeah,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
need to show, not tell.
Yes. Yes. The other thing that we're doing a lot more of lately is really the market intelligence, really helping the hiring manager see what you're looking for in the market is not available in the market. So sit side by side with me and let's look at whatever the tools, LinkedIn, Indeed, local market data, or even within our own database, because we have a lot of applications every month. But really having the hiring manager look at those CVs and say, I like this one and here's why, or I don't like this one and here's why. And then that helps get you closer faster to what's going to be the fit for the role.
Yeah. You also told me before we started that internal mobility now also falls under talent acquisition, and you took it away from the hiring manager. How did you manage that, and what are you doing?
Yes, it was quite a change management journey to make that happen. It's interesting to me that having worked in other global Fortune 500 companies, I had never seen this model where the hiring manager did all of the recruiting from opening the requisition in the system to reviewing the candidates to, pushing through the hire. And so when I came on board, I said, if we're going to transform talent acquisition, the internal piece has to be part of this. And there's a lot of pushback. There was a lot of, it's working perfectly fine now. And my question to, in particular, the HR business partners was, how do we know that the hiring manager is not just hiring the person within their site? And they're like, what do you mean? And hiring the person they can see. But what if beyond their site, there's someone who's just finished a degree program or who's just gone and gotten this certification in design and thus is the exact skill that they're looking for, but they're not paying attention to that because they can see, this person. I'm like, oh. So as we've made that shift, it has been interesting to watch. Two things have happened. One is the hiring internally tends to not be just within this short visibility range, but also quite often in the 10 business days that a role is internal, the hiring manager will say, maybe I should look external, and we'll end up making an external hire because the skills are not actually available internally. And sometimes they had been settled for, well, the person that moves forward can figure the rest of this out, right? So it's been quite a journey, and it's funny because it happens each region that I go into. I went to India earlier this year, and there it is, that internal the hiring managers doing their own thing.
So, to wrap up, this sounds like a really huge project. Can you share some of the results? Yeah, just well, what happened?
I would say there are probably two things that most show that we've made this turn. One is we measure something called quality of slate. It's not quality of hire. Quality of slate looks at three things. It looks at how long does it take for you to introduce the first candidate to the hiring manager. The second thing it looks at is the number of candidates at the top of the funnel in hiring manager review versus an interview. So what's that percentage conversion? And then the third thing it looks at is the hiring manager SAT question, where we ask the hiring manager whether they received a quality slate of candidates. That has only been in place for a little over a year, and you can see it inching up and getting better quarter over quarter. So this is to me, it shows the quality of the recruiting. And then the other thing is just this flood of recognition for the recruiters that is unsolicited, where hiring managers are finding me or finding the director in Europe and saying, Recruiter X did an amazing job for me. You know, when you start getting those unsolicited positive feedback, first of all, recruiting never stops. It's that the constant running wheel. And usually the feedback is an escalation or something negative. And over the last 9 months, it's just been a regular flow of positive feedback that tells me that it's starting to stick and we're starting to see the impact.
That's really, really cool. All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.